Please join me in welcoming Senator Whitehouse and Ann Kelly to the stage.
Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Ann. I'll give you an elbow.
An elbow.
I have a
He's
cold.
got a bit of a cold. Welcome to all of you. Wonderful to see you here this morning. I hope folks are awake. If not, my guest is going to take care of that. He has made 300 wake up to climate change speeches on the Senate floor over the last 12 years. He is a master of getting people's attention on this issue, so hold on to your seats. This will include a call to action for what each of you can do. Senator, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Ann. Thank you for the terrific work Ceres does.
Well, you have been a leader and a champion for a very long time, and we're so grateful. Grateful for your stamina, your determination, and he's not giving up. So let's talk big picture if we could for a moment, Senator. Maybe you can convey in this current environment, and let's be honest, it's been a complicated 9 months, a divided time. What do you think are the most compelling arguments right now for Republicans and independents to hear, to try to build toward solutions?
I think the one that we've focused on a lot, particularly when I was chairing the Senate Budget Committee, was how the effects of climate change are upon us now and how they're coming at families through very particular ways. And probably the biggest and most difficult way for families is what is happening to their homeowners' property insurance. If you know anybody in Florida, ask them about their property insurance, you'll get a lecture. And we just got back from a visit to Texas where I had a poll done, and the poll said that on homeowners insurance, 92% said they were concerned about their homeowners insurance cost, which was more than groceries, more than health care, more than mortgages. So it's a real top of mind concern. 63% said they were very concerned, which is a pretty significant number in polling. And here's the part that stunned me. 66% of Texans already understood that there was some connection here with climate change. So when you have the kind of economic harm and difficulty that getting involved in your homeowner's insurance failure causes for families, when we can connect that to what it is actually connected to, which is climate risk, whether it's wildfires out west or whether it's coastal risk in Florida and places like that, this is a very real thing. And people who weren't interested in polar bears and people who weren't interested in somebody else's green jobs are very interested in their own homeowners insurance. Mm-hmm. And it goes beyond homeowners insurance, because if you can't get homeowners insurance because your property is so climate imperiled that it can't be insured any longer, guess what else you can't get? You can't get a mortgage. So you may have a mortgage, but if you can't get insurance, the person you want to sell it to ultimately isn't going to be able to get a mortgage, and your property value crashes. So we had testimony from the former chief economist of Freddie Mac, the big mortgage company, who said, here's how this plays out. Climate risk collapses insurance markets. Insurance markets fail, collapse mortgage markets. Mortgage markets failing, and let me stop for a moment on mortgage markets failing. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, who is more or less useless on everything having to do with climate, he at least testified in Congress about 6 months ago that within 10 to 15 years, there'll be whole regions of the United States that are no longer mortgageable. Imagine what happens to property values in an entire region where mortgages no longer exist. So that threat is out there. And then, of course, the last domino that falls is the 2008-style cascade out into the general economy. And that's what he predicted. It was going to be like 2008 or worse all over again. So I think focusing on that, first of all, helps to head off a very serious economic crisis that is looming and visible to anybody who's paying attention, but it also talks to people where they are in their pocketbooks and lets us tell the story about how their political leaders are not listening to them, not caring about their pocketbook concerns with respect to their homeowners insurance. Instead, they're lying to them about climate change Why? Because their pockets are full of fossil fuel money. That's an argument I'd love to make all over town.
Absolutely. Hear, hear. You see, he's not going to hold back, and that's what you needed this morning. Senator Whitehouse, you've been a long-time advocate for a price on carbon, and I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about what might become before a price on carbon, which would be a carbon border adjustment mechanism.
Yeah.
I know you filed the Clean Competition Act, and I know you have a Republican colleague that's filed something similar. What are the prospects for a bipartisan agreement there?
The prospects for a bipartisan agreement on a carbon border tariff are non-trivial. I mean, they're real. Can I say it's better than 50-50? I don't know. But it really is essential. I track, among other things, the work of the Potsdam Institute, and they did a study of 1,200 different climate scenarios that had been submitted to the IPCC through their process. Of those 1,200 climate scenarios, there are 11 left that get us to climate safety. All the others are by the boards because of the obstruction and conniving and climate denial operation of the fossil fuel industry. So the path has now gotten very, very narrow, and those 11 remaining scenarios all share a common characteristic, which is there has to be a price on carbon emissions. It cannot be free to pollute. The free to pollute business model, it's not economically correct, it's not morally correct, and it's environmentally disastrous. So that has to die. It can't be free for the fossil fuel industry to pollute. So if you're looking around for a place where there actually is a price on carbon emerging, particularly globally, you look to the EU, you look at the carbon border adjustment mechanism, it's law. They've given every indication they're going to stand by it. The UK is joining and is likely to apply its own tariff as well. I believe Australia is going to join. I think, knowing Mark Carney, Canada is going to join. So you have a pretty big platform there where if you want to import your goods into those countries and you're not as carbon clean as they are, you're going to have to pay for that. So that puts a price on carbon that applies globally. And while it's just a foothold, I think if we lose that, we're toast. I describe that CBAM as our last lifeboat.
It seems like a very conservative idea at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is you talk to the Trump people in the trade representative office, and you say to them, okay, you've got a foreign country that is cheating on a pollution standard, and as a result can lower their costs, which makes a competitive problem for our American companies. Is that a tariff-worthy thing? Absolutely, that's a tariff-worthy thing. So on principle, they agree, and we have a Republican bill. Senators Cassidy and Graham have stuck to it, and it puts a tariff on imports from countries that aren't meeting our climate standards. So whether they'll be able to get much more support, we're still talking to each other. I have my own bill. They don't quite match, but we're in conversation, and we're working with the same groups, Resources for the Future and Silverado, who've given us the platform of sort of technical expertise so that we're not starting from different fact positions. We're now just having a policy difference. So I think it can be done. The principles are sound. The bipartisanship is there. The only problem is that, obviously, it's not welcome in the fossil fuel industry. And at this moment, the fossil fuel industry essentially owns and controls the United States government.
Yes, well, that's no small matter, but a little spark of hope there. And what you could hear in the senator's voice is that the staff members are working together. My understanding, your office is close to Senator Cassidy's, is that right? So you can cross the hall and the staff can go back.
We see a good deal of each other. Yeah.
Yes. All right. There's a lot of talk this week, Senator, about permitting reform, and we know some of that has to happen at the state level. But I'd love for you to comment about federal permitting reform measures. And obviously, we want to streamline renewable energy projects. But what would you be cautious about as we dive into radical permitting reform measures? And can that also be a bipartisan agreement?
Yeah, permitting reform has to be bipartisan, and it actually has to be, two committees have to be involved. In this case, it takes 4 to tango. It takes me as the ranking Democrat on the Environment Public Works Committee. It takes Shelley Capito as the chair. It takes Martin Heinrich as the ranking Democrat on the Energy Committee, and it takes Chairman Lee. So our staff have been meeting. I've expressed a clear intention to get a serious permitting reform bill done. We're working through what that is going to look like and who the kind of lead advocates are going to be. But there's every reason to get it done. What I've also said is that if the permitting reform bill cannot be predicted to significantly lower emissions, I don't want any part of it. That's the acid test for me of the substance of the permitting reform. And I think we can do that. That's not a faint hope. That's a real thing that we can do because, frankly, there's so much clean power backed up, ready to go, that just can't get onto the grid. I mean, I think if we get a really live grid reform and transmission and all of that going, the uptake of clean energy is going to be enormous. It's just a natural win. It's a natural flow. Last year, 95% of the new energy that came on the grid was wind, solar, and battery. 95%. So that's what's stacked up waiting. So we will win if we can get a permitting reform, even if they want pipelines and whatever else it is that they want. But the second problem is, once you've got the emissions-strong permitting reform, you got to have an administration that you can trust to implement it fairly. And at the moment, nobody on my side trusts the Trump administration to implement it fairly. If they got a bill that we saw huge emissions reductions from and that dramatically uptook our grid and was a fabulous thing for the economy and jobs and all of that, all they would do would go build a couple of pipelines. Mm-hmm. And if that's the way they're going to behave, there's no point. And I've said that over and over again to my Republican colleagues. None of them disagree. They all understand that you can't pass a bipartisan bill and hand it off to an umpire who is crooked and is going to only do part of the deal. Mm-hmm. So I've told them, look, I'm going to work with you. Let's do the bill, but don't be surprised when we get to the end of this process and we pull back because you guys haven't been able to show me that you can be trusted, that Trump can be trusted. Mm-hmm. And so that marker is out there, and we're going to work our way forward. There's a very, very huge potential here if we do it right. And just by the way, the trust issue, the other bills that are going to be coming through my committee that have to be bipartisan, that I'm going to be involved in, are going to be the big highway bill. And the next big water resources, the WRDA bill, we call it. So we have three really big bills. And if there's no trust, and at the moment there's no basis for trust, then there's no point going forward with any of those bills. And yet all of them have things in them that Republicans want and that they want to be a part of. And you'd think there'd be people in the Trump administration who'd like to say, oh yeah, a lot of highway work, that's probably good for the economy. Oh yeah, big water resources infrastructure, that's probably a good thing too. You know, if they kind of come to their senses and want those things, that provides extra impulse for settling the question of how you can get some confidence that they will obey the constitutional direction to the president that he must faithfully execute the laws.
Well, thank you for your candor. It is refreshing this early in the morning. There's some people in the audience, Senator, who are committed to working Capitol Hill to try to push for that very kind of bipartisan agreement, to try to instill the trust that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, this is where that call to action comes in. What do you recommend? There are businesses and investors and NGOs here, some of whom have been with us in our over 170 meetings with Republicans over the last 6 months on Capitol Hill, attempting to preserve the clean energy tax credits in the IRA. We lost. But would love your call to action, your guidance for folks who are trying to move this train forward. All the initiatives you've mentioned deserve support. But I think the trust issue is one that's really interesting. I mean, how can we help to ensure trust when it comes to this administration that may be just...
We'll have to figure it out.
We'll have to figure it out.
But as long as we've set the marker out there, they know it, they don't disagree. Frankly, they do agree. Mm-hmm. So we'll get there. I think the key things, I mean, I'll go back to CBAM again. We fail if we don't protect the CBAM. And by the way, if you run numbers and look at what it means for the US economy as the CBAM goes into effect, it's actually a boost for the US economy because China's tariff is so much higher than ours that it equalizes the incentives for European companies to buy from the US instead of to buy from China. So it should provide an economic boost, and advancing that argument, I think is very helpful, because if they don't like the CBAM, because the fossil fuel industry told them to not like the CBAM, we want to make damn sure that they're aware that the price that they're going to pay is a worse American economy. So that is very much worth communicating. And then I think awareness of what is coming in the homeowners insurance market and that potential cascade. And the Republicans don't have a good answer to that. They would come into the budget committee and basically just change the subject and say, the debt. You shouldn't be talking about climate change. That won't affect the economy, the debt. Of course, then they came back and did $4 trillion added to the debt. So I'm not exactly filled with confidence about the integrity of that concern. But the danger is very real to the economy, and it's explosively a concern in Florida. And as I described, in Texas. And so, this is a real important issue. And it really matters to families. It's a real pocketbook issue. And the more they have to face that and face the fact that this is the first real heavy economic consequence to regular families from having walked the fossil fuel walk and not done the work that they should have done on climate, stuff gets real. And that changes people.
Are you starting to hear some casual conversation among the Florida delegation? You all go to cocktail parties and lunches. Are people starting to say, man, this insurance thing is a concern on both sides of the aisle? People must be starting to scratch their heads and notice this.
Yeah. I mean, I would do the most boring stuff you could possibly imagine. First of all, it's the Senate Budget Committee. Boring. Then we're investigating an insurance fund. Even more boring. Then we're gathering documents, and this would be like a follow-up document request. And I'd get 10 calls from Florida media markets saying, we want to talk to you about this, we want to talk to you about this, because people in Florida are so aggravated about this problem. They've either been fired by their insurance company, or they've had their rates double in some cases. The average premium in Florida is $14,000 a year. And it's predicted to double and triple in different counties. So, this is really front of mind. And then you get shoved off to the Citizens Property Insurance Company, which is aggravating because it's not your choice and they're not well regarded. And then they spit you out to another company that you've never heard of. 12 of these little pop-up companies that are circulating in Florida have already gone bankrupt. So people know that as they talk to their friends, like a dozen insurance bankruptcies because they won't pay their claims. The whole thing is infuriating to people. It's very aggravating, and it's really hard on family budgets. Florida last year was the lowest state in terms of real estate transactions compared to the previous year. It led the country in falling real estate transactions. And despite all the, Florida pressure, retirees wanting to go down there and play golf and go fishing and hang out on the beach and all that kind of stuff, that's all still there. Nevertheless, Florida real estate values dropped 2% year over year from last year. So not only is there the ire in families and the anxiety in families, but now you get these statistics that are starting to come that show that it's really trembling quite a lot. And Ernest Hemingway, who spent a lot of time in Florida, famously said, he was asked, how'd you go broke? And he said, well, gradually, and then all at once. And I think Florida's into gradually in terms of having the kind of crisis that the economists and the chief economist of Freddie Mac and the head of the Federal Reserve and the International Financial Stability Board and the Economist magazine and the Allianz board of directors are warning about that this is coming and it's going to be really hard. So us being on the right side of that is going to be very important.
Absolutely. You know, you're calling this stuff boring, but I just want you all to follow Senator Whitehouse on social media. He's got dazzling videos that explain all of this. He's walking down the street and he's walking you through the policy. You do it from the Capitol. So YouTube, Instagram, follow him. It's anything but dull.
Some of it's pretty easy to explain too. I mean, the other thing that people are going to be caring a lot about in this coming election are their electric utility bills. And it is not hard to show how the Trump administration, by removing clean energy from the grid, is going to drive up electric utility bills. It's really quite simple. You pull the clean energy out of the stack, and in order to meet whatever the demand is, you've got to go to more and more expensive units, and they're fossil fuel units. So it's a really clear picture that you can draw for people that by suppressing clean energy, the Trump administration is taking money out of the pockets of ratepayers and moving it into the pockets of the fossil fuel billionaires who run those high expense units that wouldn't be called up otherwise. So now they're making money, and that deliver the fuel to those high expense units that wouldn't be running otherwise. It's a huge corporate welfare subsidy for those expensive polluting fossil fuel plants, and the ratepayers are paying for it. And as soon as they get the joke, as soon as they understand what's happening, they're not going to blame the electric utility any longer. Now they'll understand that it's the guy behind the curtain who's pulling the strings and causing this harm. So little explainers can really help get people to understand the dangers that we're seeing.
Absolutely. Your thoughts on nuclear power potential?
I've been the lead Democrat on all of the nuclear reform bills. I think there is real potential there. I think these small modular reactors, particularly in certain geographies, have very strong rationale. I think that where you have a big polluting fossil fuel plant, if you drop in, let's say, a small mod or a series of them that can boil the water a different way, you got your turbines there already to spin with the steam. You got your transformers there already. You've got the grid there already. You've got your workforce there already. You can transform a non-competitive, polluting plant by boiling water a new way with nuclear power. So those are two of the easy ways. I think developing around the world, our industry is going to be important. The Russians are doing this, others are doing this. So I think there is a future here. And if we pay attention to the folks who are looking at how you take the existing nuclear waste stockpile and turn that into clean power, now you've got a twofer. We have no plan for that nuclear waste stockpile. If we can reuse it and reduce its radioactivity and reduce its mass by running clean power off it, that's a pretty big win. So it's not going to be an easy future. It's not a slam dunk, but I think there are a lot of uses where it will be really, really helpful, where it has a place and has a role. And so that's why I've been trying to assist moving it forward.
And there's bipartisan agreement on that front, I'm going to guess.
All of these bills have been very, very, very bipartisan.
Okay.
Yes.
Terrific.
A lot.
Well, now, if you think about the next 10 months, I think our audience is probably wondering, especially at Climate Week, what they can do. What is the most effective way in which they can interact with the legislature and or the administration and or individual agencies to try to make their position known, to try to call for that kind of urgent action that you have been pushing for so long, and to push some of these pocketbook issues. I mean, much of what you've talked about is actually not very political. It's pretty economic. It transcends the politics when you talk about the economics.
But I do think you have driving the politics a very powerful operation of the fossil fuel industry. And I think it's time that we got mad about that, and that we called it out, that we put a spotlight on it. It is the biggest, yeah, thank you. The climate denial fraud operation of the fossil fuel industry is the biggest fraud perpetrated on the American people that I can ever remember. And the dark money, political influence, and corruption operation of the fossil fuel industry has completely ruined Congress. When I first got there were 4 separate serious climate change bills that were all bipartisan. And John McCain ran for president with a real solid climate platform. And then came Citizens United, and from the day Citizens United was decided, there has been no serious climate legislation that any Republican in the Senate has supported. It was like a headshot to bipartisanship, dead instantly, because the fossil fuel industry could come into the leaders and say, we can give you infinite amounts of money, we can hide that it's us, all you have to do is shut up your people who are doing bipartisan stuff on climate. And that's why we are where we are. It's time we got mad about the corruption from the fossil fuel dark money operation, and it's time we got mad about the fraud from the fossil fuel climate denial operation. They are corrupt and they are fraud, and we should start damn saying so while we still can.
All right. Well, he's telling us what he really thinks. Please join me in thanking wonderful Senator Sheldon Whitehouse for his leadership. Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.